Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Howdy, 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 everybody. How are y'all doing? Welcome, welcome. We've got a lot going on in, well, all of the cases, really. Right now, we're going to be talking Idaho. There's some more documents for Karen Reed. I've got all those. There's some more documents for the Adelsons. I've got all those. There's some more documents for Shannon Gardner. I've got all those. So we're just going to make our way through as we do, as one does. Shout out to ABC's Docket, who's at work but sneaking a listen. Love it. Love, love, love it. We won't tell anybody, I promise. So this is exciting. We, all the new filings, of course, as you guys can see, we've got a new layout system here for the Idaho judicial cases of interest. And we have just some recently uploaded here onto the docket, more motions in limine from the state. So one of the big ones here that we are going to be covering today is the 911 call transcript, as well as some text messages and testimony with DM and BF. So we're going to cover that as well. And we're also going to cover the defense's motion in limine regarding the bushy eyebrows. So let me just get this pulled up here. Bushy eyebrows. Okay. So all righty. And let me zoom in a little bit for y'all. State's motion in limine regarding or in re 911 call. Also, I want to real quick give some shout outs to all of our channel members. Our channel memberships are brand new. It's super, super exciting. And as I've let you guys know that as more people join, there's more perks YouTube lets you do. And I didn't know that until I started offering memberships, but one of them is how many custom emoji you can have. So I've just added another custom emoji. For those of you guys who are following or have followed anything with Murdoch, as promised, remember I said I would try to make a custom emoji with the two gray boys with their lasers, 5'2", 11-year-old assassins. We've got it. That is our newest emoji available to the members. So let's see here. I want to just give a shout out to all of the channel members. So without further ado, shout out to Too Fast for Fleas, DSN, Daddy Shortcuts, Daddy Shortcuts, aka DSN, Orphan Methodology, P Fox, Gen X to the 7th Power, Cat Randall, Kid Smits, King Bees the Purge, Just Beth, Heather Fitzgerald, Flash Fan, aka Flash, Need Some Z's, Meg P, Twizzle Stick, Victorine DB, I Love Elephants, Carla, Candace, Iowa's Backyard, Frankie Figs, aka Franks, and Sudi. I don't know how to say Sudi's last name. I never pronounce it, but I think Vasek. Let me know, Sudi, if you're watching, if I'm saying that correctly or which way, Vasek or Vachik maybe. But Sudi, first name Sudi. So there you go. So those are our members here at this juncture. So big shout out to all of those guys, all of our squirrel friends. We love all of our squirrel friends. So yeah, so we are going to take a look here. All right, you guys ready? I've got my coffee, I've got my goat, I've got my sparkle water. All right, so this is the state. This is the state's motion in limine. One might think this would be a defense motion in limine, but no, it's the state. Okay. Moves the court for an order in limine allowing the state to admit admit the recording and transcript of the 911 call to Whitcomb on November 13th, 2022. Okay, so this is a motion in limine allowing the state to admit it. So remember, with motions in limine, either party can move the court to either allow something or not allow something, or allow something in a redacted manner or whatever. So this is a motion to allow the state to admit it. What's surprising is like in every trial, right? 911 calls always come in. It's like, I kind of thought it was like an automatic thing, a given as it were, but they're making a motion to eliminate to admit the minute. So have I read these docs already? I haven't. I mean, there's so many, right? I haven't read all of them. I've perused them or taken a glance, but no, this is a first look. So you guys will get a genuine reaction from me with this. I have not gone through this one. This just popped up like last night, I think. I've not gone through this one. Nor the next one we're going to do, which is the text messages with DM and BF and stuff. So this is my first look. So shout out to Nees and Z's and Frankie Figs, Franks. And Denise also, welcome. Denise, that's fine. Denise is in court, has me on mute, but wanted to say hi. That is freaking awesome. Shout out to Denise who has me on mute. We love it. Our resident defense attorney, as it were, here at Squirrel Crew. We love her. So, okay. So they want to admit this recording. All righty. Facts. All right. Argument. Okay, the statements on the 911 call are hearsay, but fall within firmly rooted hearsay exceptions to be allowed. Okay, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, technically it is hearsay, but again, we always see 911 calls at trial, right? It is a YouTube membership, and I will have Nightbot put a link in the chat for you as well for anyone else who wants to join. There we go. It should. Usually there's like, depending on what device you're on, usually there's like a thing that says join, but I know that there's been some recent difficulty for people on iPhones, but the link should pop up and that should work, I believe, for any device when that comes up in the chat. If Nightbot will wake up. Wake up, Nightbot. Little cutie. Okay, so they are hearsay but fall within firmly rooted exceptions and should be allowed. In general, testimony that is hearsay is excludable at trial. However, there are many exceptions to this rule. Okay, she's confirming she's on her phone. Well, that link should pop up here in a second from Nightbot. 2 firmly rooted exceptions are Idaho Rule of Evidence 8031, so present sense impression. A statement describing or explaining an event or condition made while or immediately after the declarant perceived it. Yes, present sense impression. Idaho Rule of Evidence 8032, excited utterance. Yes, indeed. Statement relating to a startling event or condition made while the declarant was under the stress of the excitement it caused. Declarant is the person making the statement, right? I don't know why Nightbot, hold on. Maybe it's members with an S. I thought it was member singular. One of these should work. Need Some Z's says, I have questions. This is my takeaway from the 911 call and the text submitted. All right. Okay, there's the link in the chat for anyone who is on an iPhone and wants to figure out how to join and have a channel membership. There you go. Okay, so the requirements of the federal version of each of these rules are best stated in US v. Mitchell. There are 3 principal requirements which must be met before hearsay evidence may be admitted as a present sense impression. 1, the declarant must have personally perceived the event described. 2, the declarant must be an explanation or a description of the event rather than a narration. And 3, the declaration of the event described must be contemporaneous, which means as the thing is happening. Now, for those of you guys who watched Step v. Heard, Elaine was a disaster with the hearsay exceptions, right? And there were so many times when she tried to get an exception in with like the present sense impression, and it was like Judge A had to keep explaining to her present sense. It has to be present, and it would be something that was like had happened in the past or like hadn't happened yet, and it was like, why are we not getting this, Elaine? It has to be present. So contemporaneous, right? And excellent, it worked. ABC's docket is a new member. Awesome, welcome. Love it. We already have quite a number of members only things available to you guys as well. And just in case anyone hasn't heard it yet, I'm always open and in fact requesting and would love to have any suggestions or requests or ideas for members only content, especially like members only live streamed ideas. And you can put those in the Discord. There is a thread for that for like members only. It says like you'll see it there in the Discord where you can put, right now we've talked a lot about like doing like live streams regarding like orchids and stuff, because we have a number of squirrel friends who have orchids. but it doesn't, it's not going to only be organs. It can be whatever you guys want. So just let me know if there's anything you'd like to do for a members only live stream, or have other members only ideas. One of these days, maybe we'll have some merch. I have no idea how to go about that, but I think you have to have a lot more support to get stuff like that going. But I personally would love to have a squangwin stuffed animal, but that, anyway. So present sense impression or excited utterance. Okay. So and again, this is my first look, but thinking back to excited utterance, right? So a startling event or condition made while the declarant was under the stress of the excitement that it caused. An example of that they will give for an excited utterance is like, oh my God, did you just see him hit that car? Right? Well, it might seem like there's some overlap between present sense impression and excited utterance, and I can understand why that might seem that way. The excited utterance is a little bit different in that it's like an exclamation of something. That can sometimes be something that's a bit over the top. It might not even be correct, right? Because it's like you're just exclaiming it at the time. And actually, let's take a look here at this. Let me not pull this up. This is in a book. Okay, so exceptions. We're just going to go through some of these hearsay exceptions, right? So present sense impression, excited utterance, we got that. Then existing mental, emotional, or physical condition, statement made for a medical diagnosis or treatment, recorded recollection. So that's like somebody's journal or diary, right? For example, records of regularly conducted activity. That's like business records, right? Or absence of a record of regularly conducted activity. Public records. So that's things like, shit that's within the public record. Like, so for example, the court and whatnot. Public records of vital statistics, absence of a public record. Religious organizations, certificates of marriage, family records. And these become less and less more common as they go along. But like another example of like an excited utterance would be like if somebody's like on their last breath or whatever, and as they're dying, they're like, I did it. I'm the one that killed so and so. Again, excited utterance. That would be another sort of example of that. And I think that another difference or distinction between the excited utterance and the present sense impression is the excited utterance is like under a certain amount of stress or excitement at the time that could cause that statement. And again, a lot of times they can be admitted as for being incorrect because of the immediate stress or excitement, which is like they're just, that's what popped into their brain and that's what they said, versus a present sense impression doesn't necessarily require a certain amount of stress or excitement. In other words, it could be immediately after. So you could have somebody have an excited utterance, oh my God, blah, 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 right? And then like immediately after the declarant perceives it, they could have a present sense impression that could be different than what they just uttered, if that makes sense. Frankie Fig says, my excited utterances consist of 4-letter words. Seems legit to me. Love it. Okay. All right, the requirements for a hearsay statement to constitute an excited utterance are a startling occasion, a statement relating to the circumstances of the startling occasion, a declarant who appears to have had opportunity to observe personally the events, and a statement made before there's been no time to reflect and fabricate. Right. Again, it's immediate at the time, right? Versus again, like present tense impression can be right immediately after, but that's still considered to be contemporaneous for the purposes of exceptions to hearsay. In Idaho, the Court of Appeals viewed the requirements for excited utterance as follows. Also, shout out to excited utterance, as in the YouTube channel, who mods for Andrea Burkhart and has been in the chat for various live streams. I think especially the Shannon Gardner, Hella. Shout out to Hella. Okay, to fall within the excited utterance exception, an out-of-court statement must meet 2 requirements. First, there must be a startling event that renders inoperative the normal reflective thought process of the observer. And second, the declarant statement must be a spontaneous reaction to that event rather than the result of reflective thought. So this is articulating what I was kind of just saying, but it's much more in a much more clear manner, right? That it's not the result of, which is why, like I was saying, sometimes they're let in to show that it was not a correct thought because they didn't have a chance to reflect on it, right? Whether a statement falls within the excited utterance exception is left to the sound discretion of the trial court. In ruling on the admissibility of a statement under the excited utterance exception, the trial court considers the totality of circumstances surrounding the statement. The circumstances to be considered include the amount of time that elapsed between the startling event and the statement, the nature of the condition or event, the age of and condition of the declarant, the presence or absence of self-interest, and whether the statement was volunteered or made in response to a question. So whether they just uttered it or it was because they were asked, basically. Calls to 911 can also be deemed present sense impressions and or excited utterances. That makes sense. That makes sense. And they can also, here we go. Remember, I was just saying public record, right? So public record, business record, they're saying these are other exceptions for 911 calls. Public record, business record. Okay. In the case at bar, most of the declarations made were present sense impressions. HJ located the unresponsive body of Xana Kernodle and informed BF and DM to call 911. EA was present at the time. All declarants personally perceived the event, which is Kernodle unresponsive. The majority of the declarations were describing to dispatcher Carolina Calvin what they were perceiving, aka present sense impressions. Those statements relate to Kernodle being passed out and not waking up. That's okay. So we're getting more information that we've been really waiting for here, right? Which is, what was the deal with saying that people were passed out and not waking up? Like, how would somebody not be like, oh my God, there's blood everywhere, right? Or stabbed. And there's potential explanations to that, but let's just keep reading and see what happens here. The declarations were made immediately after HJ discovered Kernodle's body. Some declarations made would also be considered excited utterance. Those statements include, oh, and hey, they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. As well as having breathing and crying that can be heard throughout the call. The declarants were responding to a startling occasion, which is the discovery of an unresponsive roommate. Yeah, the unresponsive is just wild to me. The statement regarding a person being in the home is a direct response to why Kernodle might be passed out. All statements are made while declarants are processing what is happening and were made before an opportunity to reflect and fabricate why Kernodle is unconscious. Clearly, the statements of BF, DMEA, HJ, and the dispatcher fall within the hearsay rule exceptions. Judge John Judge has already ruled that the 911 call is not hearsay because it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. So beyond hearsay exceptions, right, like we just covered, things are not, by definition, what is hearsay? Hearsay is a statement that is being offered to prove the fact of the matter asserted, right? So if it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, if it's not being offered for the truth, as they say, then by definition, it's not hearsay. Therefore, you don't need a hearsay exception, right? You only need a hearsay exception if something's being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. And I forgot to say out of court. That's the most important part. So an out of court statement, right? Being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. So, which is why in-court statements are never hearsay, right? So again, if it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but it's an out-of-court statement, then it does not need an exception because it does not count as hearsay. And even if deemed hearsay, the exceptions for present sense impression and excited utterance apply. On October 23rd, 2023, defendant moved to dismiss the grand jury indictment. One basis for that motion was the 911 call was improperly admitted hearsay. Cumulative. Okay, now this answers my question as to why the state is filing this motion in limine, because at first I was confused. Right now this makes sense because there's been some back and forth over this. That the defense was saying that the 911 call was improperly admitted, hearsay, cumulative, relevant, and an improper attempt to bolster witness testimony. In response, Judge John Judge held as follows. Further, even if the 911 call is hearsay, the exceptions for present sense impression and excited utterance apply, as the statements made by the callers were made immediately after HJ discovered Ms. Kernodle's body and instructed the roommates to call 911. And remember, it sounds like HJ discovered the body, but everybody there went and saw her, I guess, right? Regarding the emotion in the caller's voices, Judge Judge, right, further held that the evidence was relevant as to why law enforcement was sent to 1122 King Road as opposed to just EMS when the call was for an unconscious individual. That's interesting. In other words, what I'm gathering here is like from how they were on the call, the emotion in their voices, which that's something we'll get more of when we hear it versus just reading a transcript, that they could tell that the dispatchers could it seems like gathered that this was not just didn't just necessitate EMS, but also law enforcement. So in other words, while they were saying it was an unconscious individual, they could tell it was worse than that. That's kind of my takeaway here from that. This testimony was deemed relevant to the effect it had on dispatcher Calvin and not cumulative of Officer Nunez's testimony. Good morning, Candace. Welcome. Oh, you're saying at the house? Okay, not going and looking for the others in the house. I don't know. I have no idea. It is, and also, weren't they supposed to be near each other? I mean, we don't really know yet, but like that was what we, Ethan and like, I don't know. We'll find out. It's the whole thing's crazy. The whole thing's crazy. Yeah, I would have imagined that. Like, I can understand not going upstairs because you might think that there's still somebody in the house. But if you're thinking that, then you're also somewhat recognizing that someone's not just unconscious or passed out, but that they're also hurt, like somebody hurt them, right? So that there's a discrepancy there. But if you do think, okay, maybe there's somebody in the house, right? I could see not going upstairs. But again, I guess I kind of had an understanding based on what we know, which isn't that much, that Xana and Ethan would have been close enough together maybe to where you would have seen both of them in one viewing, as it were. Okay, so the statements made on the 911 call are admissible regardless of whether or not witnesses testify. Conclusion based on, okay, so now we're going to get into the transcript. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Here we go. Again, I have not read this. Literally, I just made sure that it was attached as an exhibit. All right, here we go. So we have here's the characters, as it were, right? So we have Q is dispatch, Q1 is man, Q2 is woman 1, Q3 is man 1, Q4 is man. Oh, I'm not going to read all that. Y'all can see it. Jesus. Okay. I'm sure we all feel this sentiment here. Denise saying that she's never been so impatient to watch a trial in her life. 911. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do like a dispatcher voice if I can. 911, location of your emergency. And so who did they say called? Jesus, it was a dude, right? Caller. I can't do a dude's voice anyway, but yeah. Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what. We have dispatch. So whenever it says Q, that's dispatch. So I'll say dispatch. What is the address of the emergency? Answer, 1122. No, don't. Interesting. Dispatcher, what is the rest of the address? Answer, oh, Kings Road. Dispatcher. Okay, and is that a house or an apartment? Hold on. We have an answer for that. Is it a house or apartment? Hang on, guys. We have an answer for that one.
It's a house.
That's Alex Murdoch when he was asked literally like that same question on his 911 call. And then answer, it's a house. Question, can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right? Answer, I'll talk. Oh, this is a different person now. I'll talk to you guys. We're live at the right, or sorry, we live at the right, so we're next to them. Dispatcher, I need someone to repeat the address for verification. Answer, the address 1122 King Road. Dispatcher, and what's the phone number that you're calling from? Answer, what's your phone number? And then that's redacted. They're giving phone numbers. Okay, dispatcher. Okay, and tell me exactly what's going on. Answer, one of the roommates who's passed out and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up. Interesting. Oh, and then another person, the first caller says, no, we saw shit. And then that's not in the transcript. That's me saying that. And then the dispatcher says, okay. And then the second person says, Oh, shit. Okay, so this would be the excited utterance type thing. Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. Wow. The first person says, hi. Dispatcher says, and are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone. Stop passing it around. Yeah, good point there from the dispatcher. The first person says, can I just tell you what happened pretty much? And the dispatcher says, what is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now? First caller, I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m. Dispatcher. So it sounds like to me that they've already talked. Interesting. Now we know, well, we're going to get into it. We know that DM was texting, right? But it sounds like, regardless of any of that, like, because it seems like she was texting BF, right? But that'll come up in the next document, I'm sure. But regardless, it sounds like DM and or BF told these other folks, which we know there's like the boyfriend and whoever else is there. So that like, okay, here's what's crazy to me. Because if like, okay, we know there was a delay in making the call, right? But like, it's like they already have a time, 4 a.m. and a dude in the house. It's like in other words, what am I saying? Conversation transpired apparently before anybody called 911. Because how else would he have this information, right? Dispatcher says, okay, I need to know what's going on right now. If someone is passed out, can you find that out? Do you have a question for me? Hold on. Is there a question for me here? What were you tagging me here for, Need some Z's? So, okay. So then the first caller says, yeah, I'll come. Come on, we got to go check. But we have to. Is she passed out? She's passed out. What's wrong? The dispatcher says, dispatching Moscow Lane ambulance for. And then the first caller says, she's not waking up. And then the dispatch, okay, Denise says her judge just came out on the bench. Awesome. Good luck in court. Okay, no problem, no problem. And Frank says maybe Xana was slumped over blocking the opening of the door. Possible. It's possible. Yep. Passed out, though, to me, I would think laying down, but anything's possible, right? Dispatching Moscow Lane, so she's not waking up. And then the dispatcher says, unconsciousness, 1122 King Road. And then we have another person here, 70 is en route. Okay, one moment, I'm getting help started that way. Okay, maybe, and then unintelligible, 1122 King Road. All ambulance respond for unconsciousness. And so again, what we're getting here, or what we already got the context for, is like she can tell, this dispatcher can tell, it seems like that this is worse than what they're maybe saying, because they're, yeah. Q2, I copy. Unintelligible 58, multiple RPs on the phone. Advised saying the roommate on scene is passed out and not waking up. Believes she got drunk last night, and unintelligible about a male being in the room with them. Q1, unintelligible being around. Dispatcher, that one I copy, about 20-year-old female unconscious trying to get further. Copy. Yeah, it's Evan. Okay, and how old is she? She's 20. 20, you said? Yes, 20. Here, do you want to talk to him? Okay, hello. Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people. Jesus Christ. Okay, sorry, they just gave me the phone. Is she breathing? Hello? Is she breathing? No. Okay. Unintelligible en route. And then we have, it says Bethany or Dylan, I need you to talking to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them. Okay, hello? Okay, I already have sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. And then, okay. If there's and this is again the dispatcher here. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it. Units responding, RPs advising. Unintelligible. The patient is not conscious, not breathing. Unintelligible. Okay, and then more about the defibrillator. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it. We don't have one. Unconscious, not breathing. Do you have a defibrillator? Yep, we have one. So these are like the different responding EMS people. But are you talking to the officer? Yes. Oh, okay. So an officer's there. Okay. And then she says, okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you. Okay, thank you. Bye. Okay. Moscow 46 out. Copy. 13. I think we have a homicide. Okay. Who's Q4? Hold on. Man 2. Jesus Christ, that's stupid. Okay, I think we have a homicide. Moscow engine 20 is en route. 1370. 70 unintelligible. 107. I relate it. Is that it? That's it. So 20, I don't think they say anything about being 20. They say engine 20. If they were actually looking in the room or on either floor. They said she's not breathing. I mean, normally, we hear a lot of these calls, right? Normally, what do they say? They tell them to go over and check their pulse. They tell them to start CPR. I mean, it doesn't look like any of this is redacted apart from when they give their phone numbers. So, because what I was thinking is like, if somebody says to the person, go check their pulse or go start CPR, because if you see someone you're not sure, I can understand not wanting to go touch them, right? Obviously. But like if they tell you to go over and like touch them and to start CPR or to take their pulse, then that would be a way that you could then find out for sure that they're deceased, right? But they weren't given any of those instructions here. And maybe because the responding officers were so close, because this doesn't look like it was a long phone call. Maybe they were just so close that they didn't want these kids to go over there and do anything and mess it up. Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. She didn't even mention, I mean, yeah, no CPR, no checking of the pulse. She didn't instruct them to do anything. She was just trying to get enough information to where people could get there. But it seems like they got there pretty quickly. I mean, because this is a short transcript. Shout out to Meg. So let me just take a look. So passed out. She was drunk. They saw some man. The part that's so interesting to me is the part that clearly there was conversation where information was relayed to the other people before they called about person being in their house in the 4:00 a.m. That's interesting. I think she was talking to other dispatchers there with the defibrillators. I guarantee you she wasn't talking to the kids. Where was it? The key here. So all of the Qs are different, either law enforcement or ambulance. They're all A's are the people who are there, right? The kids essentially. So when they're talking about the defibrillator, oh no, it does look like. So here's the thing. So you know how these calls are so crazy, right? Because they're talking to the person on the phone and they're also talking to the other people, other dispatch, other, law enforcement, whatever, first responders. So it seems like this person, they may not have been answering this question, or they may have thought it was a question for them. But this to me right here is clear that they're talking to another person who's a first responder. Why? Because units responding, RPs advising, that's information. That's not information for any of the kids who are there, right? This is, if there's a defibrillator, but send somebody to get now and tell me you have it, units responding, RPs advising, they're talking to the other people, like, you know. And so this, remember, A, normally we see question and answer. Doesn't mean they're answering that question. A is just the first caller, the first person on the phone. So in other words, they say something unintelligible. It doesn't mean that it's in response to this. That's my take on it. Again, even here, the patient is not conscious, not breathing. That's not information for the caller, right? Yeah, they're confused. So she's talking to, again, they're hearing her talk to the other first responders. I think. But he doesn't know that. He says, we don't have one, because then the other person says unconscious, not breathing. Oh, weird. Do you have a defibrillator? Weird. Oh, and see, she's confused. Are you talking to the officer? Okay. So, this dude is, okay, I understand. So what's happening is there's already officers there. The caller does, or the dispatcher doesn't know that. So there's a lot of miscommunication going on in a way where the dispatcher is like talking to the other people through the walkie-talkie thing or whatever system they use, right? I don't know what it's called. And then, but the person on the phone, one of the kids, is like answering the questions, right? Thinking that she's asking them. So then when law enforcement gets there, this person, I think it's a he, right, goes and asks them if they have a defibrillator. And then they say, Q3 says, yep, that must be like the first person on scene. And then he responds, yes, we have one. And she's confused because she's like, are you talking to the officer? Okay, that makes sense. And then he says, yes. Okay. Does that clarify things for you guys? Hopefully. Right. Yeah. That is, Frank says that it's interesting. Women typically pee at death, but men don't. That's interesting to know. And it's possible that there was another 911 call made. I mean, that was one of my other thoughts, was like this, there might have been a different 911. There could have been more than one, right? Do we know? Like, the reason we're seeing this is because there's a motion in limine to admit it, because of the thing about it being hearsay. Like, for example, there could be another 911 call, right? But if the defense didn't object because of it being hearsay, like they did here, right? There wouldn't be any, if they just said, yeah, that's fine or whatever, then we wouldn't see anything about it, right? Potentially, unless it's referenced somewhere else. But the reason this is here is because of that whole thing about the back and forth previously with if it's hearsay or not, or if there's exceptions. And so that's why there's a motion in limine about this particular call. If the defense didn't object, then there wouldn't be a motion in limine about it, right? So now let's go to, okay, the state's motion in limine in re, or regarding the text messages and testimony. Okay, let me just get some water here. Okay. So this is allowing the state to admit the text messages of DM and testimony from DM and BF regarding their conversations with each other on November 13th. Standard of admissibility. And again, present tense impression, excited utterance. This is exactly as we saw in the previous filing here. Verbatim so far here with the case law. Now this part's different here. Some courts have admitted excited utterance, quote, made well after the event when the declarant was suddenly subjected to rekindled excitement, because events may so deeply traumatize a person that long after stress has subsided, a chance reminder may have enormous psychological impact. So like PTSD. causing renewed stress and excitement and inducing utterances relating to the original trauma. Yeah, like PTSD. There's no requirement within the language of Idaho Rules of Evidence 803 that the declarant be excited or emotionally affected by the event or condition in order to fall within the present sense exception. But if so, then the statement can overlap with the excited utterance exception. In the case at bar, starting on November 30th, DM sends a text message to EG, which is Uber driver, to inquire if he's driving. This is at 2:10:29 a.m. Maybe a.m. Probably. The state submits this text message exchange is not hearsay because it will not be offered for the truth of the matter asserted, right? Instead, it will be offered show timeline for the night. Okay, so then this is 2:10 a.m. Okay. DM was awake and texting. Okay. DM attempts to call BF, and then Xana, Kaylee, and Madison, the calls were unanswered. And that is, okay, sorry, that's from 4:19. Wow. From 4:19 to 4:21:50 a.m. She attempts to call BF, Xana, Kaylee, and Madison. The records of these calls are not hearsay because they do not meet the definition of a statement, right? So in other words, it's just the call happened. And here's the text messages. So from 4:22 to 4:24. So remember, BF didn't answer the phone, but they're going to text now. So this is like 1 minute later. So 4:22 a.m. DM and BF send the following text message. So DM to BF, no one is answering. DM to BF, I'm really confused right now. DM to Gonzalez, Kaylee. DM to Gonzalez, what is going on? BF to DM, yeah, dude, WTF. BF to DM, Xana was wearing all black. DM to BF, I'm freaking out right now. Interesting. Do you guys remember from the video? Or no, wait, we didn't have her on video, did we? Like from that night, dude. Yeah, because I was thinking like the food truck, but she wasn't there. Oh my God. She was wearing all black. I mean, that is like, I don't know why a college student would be wearing all black, but I guess they could. I mean, I always had to wear all black because that's concert black. That's completely fucking different for concerts, classical music concerts, right? But for most people, I feel like that would not be common unless they worked somewhere that required all black, and then maybe they went out after work. Shout out to Toes. Welcome back, my friend. She texted. So DM was not out with them that night, right? I mean, I don't remember. I mean, the reason I'm asking is because this Uber driver, like, my read on this was like whoever the Uber driver was, EG, right? I'm so sure one of you guys knows. I'm thinking, to me, the way this read was like this might be her boyfriend or a friend who happened to be an Uber driver. Because it's not like, I mean, I don't know. I never used Uber, but like, I don't know that you have like a personal Uber driver that you text message when you don't need a ride somewhere, right? Like to ask them if they're driving. It sounds like that's a friend or a boyfriend, maybe. Okay, so who is this? Who's Eric Grower? Thank you, Meg. That's a great point. Thank you for that, Franks. If she was wearing all black, that could explain not seeing blood. Yep, that totally could. Yep. But what's interesting is like when they mentioned this, my read on this, okay, so I have so many thoughts. Like my read on this, like the way I interpreted this part where it says Xana was wearing all black, these are the text messages before that they would have seen, well, to our knowledge, right? This is 4:22. The way that I feel like this, like, why would she say this? Okay, let's ask this question. Why would BF say this to DM? Now, could there have been previous text messages? Maybe. If not, why would she be saying this? Like maybe like you would have a hard time seeing her in the dark. But my read on this, when with this part, Xana was wearing all black, would be like they must have had prior communication where DM said to BF, I saw somebody wearing all black. And BF is saying this potentially to say, well, Xana was wearing all black. As in, it might not have, whatever, right? Like if DM said, I saw someone wearing all black and they're not answering, and then BF is like, well, Xana was wearing all black. It could be like, that's an explanation for what the person you saw, maybe. Now, the other thing that's interesting is this part, guys. So here it says from 419 to 420, DM attempts to call BF, Xana, Kaylee, and Madison, all calls unanswered. Now, the way this is structured grammatically makes it seem like it's all the calls to all of them were unanswered, including BF, which is why I mentioned it looked like BF didn't answer, but then she answered the text message, but she didn't answer the phone call. But it may be what it is that it's really attempts to call BF. There could have been a call answered, right? And then these were all unanswered. I don't know. It's not clear. But also what could have happened is maybe BF didn't answer the phone, but maybe there were text messages prior, right? Remember, this might not, it's just these text messages. So it's not, we don't know. There could have been text messages prior where DM said something like, I saw somebody in all black. Or maybe she did answer the phone and she said, I saw somebody in all black, right? But this is interesting. This statement right here either seems to be in response to something that DM told her already, or it could be like, you'd have a hard time seeing her. But again, that doesn't, with the context we have, it doesn't sound like DM has tried to go look for anybody. It sounds like DM is like, no one's answering their phones, right? So I don't know. What do you guys think? Okay. Private driver. I mean, why did she text him? It doesn't actually say the text message, right? It doesn't, we don't get the text message. It just says sends a text message to EG to inquire if he's driving. Interesting. Like, why would somebody ask somebody else that, right? Like, if they want to be able to like have a phone call, and maybe if he's an Uber driver, there's somebody else in the car. I don't know. It's interesting. Like, think about times, when do you talk to somebody, guys, say, hey, are you driving right now? Or you text them to ask if they're driving. It's like, if you're on the phone with them and you ask if they're driving, it's probably because you're like, oh, I hear other sound, like maybe the windows are open or it's a Bluetooth connection. But if you're texting them and inquire if they're driving, it's like maybe because you want to take another action and you wouldn't take that action if they're driving. Like, that's my take on that part. I don't know, but I don't know. Why is she not calling or texting the roommates before 419? Again, we don't know that she isn't. We wouldn't know if there's other phone calls or text message exchanges prior to 419, but there's not any, the defense is not, there's no discrepancy over them. There's no need for motion in limine. We don't know about those yet, right? Just like with the 911 call, same thing, where it's possible there was a previous 911 call, but because there's no discrepancy over it, the reason we're seeing this, just like with the 911 call, is because the defense has raised some sort of issue and they have to make a motion in limine to have it included. So we just have to keep that in mind, that this isn't the totality of everything, potentially, right? If the defense doesn't object to it and there's no issue, then there wouldn't be a motion in limine asking the court to include it. Do we know this is the same driver who just dropped them off? Is that what you're like? Because Needsome's is asking, like, why would Dylan be texting the driver who just dropped Kaylee and Maddie off? Do we know that this is the same driver? I just don't remember if we got that name or whatever the name was. This is an interesting question. I wonder if there was food insecurities in that house. What do you mean by that, Toes? That's interesting. I mean, maybe they use this driver regularly, and so that's why they like had a way to contact them directly versus like ordering an Uber through the app, which is what I understand people do. Again, I've never used an Uber. my understanding would be like it just pairs you with a person who's closest or something, you know what I mean? But maybe in Moscow, there's not that many, and if they use the same person regularly, you know, it's sort of like when you have a barista at a place that's like your regular barista, right? I don't know. So, but again, the state is saying the reason they want to offer that at all is that to show that DM was awake and texting at 2:10. I don't know why that is necessary, but that's what I mean, maybe it's because we don't know her whereabouts. I don't know. It's interesting. So I would love to know more about the food insecurities thing though. Okay, yeah, I don't know. I'm just still not sure what that would mean. So if they didn't share food in the house, I mean, yeah, I'm sure that could be a problem with like you got a lot of people living there, but I don't know. Usually people work that out when you've got a lot of college kids in the house. So okay, no, this makes it clear that they had a previous conversation right here, right? Okay, because I think I didn't have it scrolled down further. Okay, so BF to DM, Xana was wearing all black. DM to BF, I'm freaking out right now. DM to BF, no, it's like the ski mask almost. So that's DM responding to it couldn't have been Xana in all black. That's how I interpret that, which means again, they must have maybe BF did answer the phone. Maybe BF did answer the phone. And maybe, I don't know, potentially if they're scared, maybe they're like, let's get off the phone because if you don't, I'm just imagining if I think somebody's in the house and there's other people and I'm like communicating with them, I would not be wanting to talk on the phone because then it's like, you don't want them to hear your voice, right? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's why they went to text messaging. I don't know. But clearly they did have another communication in which DM mentioned something about somebody wearing all black. And then again, like BF is like, well, Xana was wearing all black. And then it's like, no, it was a ski mask almost. BF to DM, shut the fuck up. Wow. BF to DM, actually, DM to BF. Like he had something, I'm correcting the typos here. Like he had something over his head and little something in mouth. These could be voice to text issues as well. I have those happen all the time. I don't know. DM to BF. BF, I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out. BF to DM, so am I. DM to BF, my phone is going to die. Fuck. Interesting. BF to DM, come to my room. BF to DM, run. BF to DM, down here. Wow. Now, what's interesting is I remember at some point there was speculation, I don't remember why, but that maybe her phone had died, DM's phone. And now it looks like that happened. Wow. So I will just say real quick that the important part here to me is this part, come to my room, run down here. So if they're really fucking freaked out because there's somebody in the house, she's like, my phone's going to die. It could be, well, I've got a charger down here. But I think more importantly, it's like the priority looks like is like, come downstairs. Like, I don't know. Maybe they think that's, I don't know. I don't know. Like she's saying she's so freaked out, right? Remember, so DM is like, saw somebody in black with a ski mask, right? According to this, and is telling BF how freaked out she is and no one's answering the phone. And then the other thing about this is this right here, this is like, okay, she didn't go upstairs and look, right? Come down here, run down here. The run is really interesting to me. That is almost like a horror movie, right? Like run down here. Wow. Yeah. Right? I would have dove out a window, not stay in the house. Yep. Good. Same. Yep. Window. Where was the question here? I don't get the impression, so Denise says, I don't get the impression from these texts that there is anyone in the house at the time they are texting. My impression of this is they don't know. My impression, now this is just one little snippet. My impression of this is they don't know if someone's still in the house. DM says she saw somebody. They're both scared. If they thought there wasn't somebody in the house, there would be no need to run down there to another room. This sounds like fear and panic to me, and that they don't know what is going on. The other thing is, remember, from all of the shit, even from the PCA, right? It's like Dylan's DM saw a figure clad in black walking, heading towards the sliding glass door. Nowhere does it ever state that she saw him leave through the sliding glass door, to my memory, right? Because I would remember, like, there's a words matter, right? Towards the sliding glass door. She didn't see him leave. Now, remember, the state seems to want to characterize it as, because they want to be able to explain the door that the person left through, right? So I can see the state characterizing it as like, oh, that's the person, that's how they got out. And also because of their time frame with the Elantra, right? However, for DMs, from her standpoint, if she just saw someone walking by and it was like in that direction, it's clear to me from this that they don't know that someone's not in the house, right? And so, in other words, the state would want to try to show that definitely the assailant left at that time, left through that door, and then they can match that up with the car and everything, right? That would be their incentive to try to make it seem like the person was definitely leaving out that door at that time. But the impression from the people that are there seem to think there's somebody still in the fucking house, or they don't know for sure. It's not like in other words, clearly, if they saw the person leave, this wouldn't make any sense, right? Like, that's my point. It's clear to me that DM didn't see the person walk out the door, right? To where, and it might just be that they saw the person clad in black, and then they're asked what direction was he walking, and just like she points or whatever, and then law enforcement or whatever is like, oh, well, there's the sliding glass door, and then from there you see how that, right? Because in the PCA, it's a characterization of the interactions and the conversations they had with her, if that makes sense. And so it's kind of like, oh, she saw him walking and heading towards the sliding glass door. But even if you see someone going towards something, that's really still so subjective, right? Like, something could still be far away, right? But somebody could still be moving in that direction. But because it's far away, if you then don't see them after, if you go back in your room and close the door or whatever, like, it doesn't mean that they didn't change direction. Just like how a car, like, I don't know. It's just, if I didn't see somebody actually getting out that walk, going through that door, I would not assume that they had left personally. But also, you couldn't assume that there's not more than one person in the house. I don't know. Being scared makes sense to me is what one thing. Yeah, it was assumed by law enforcement. Yep. And I agree. BF knew it seems like she felt safer. Now, it could be, that's a good point. Maybe it's because of the different level on the house. I don't know. That is 100%. I mean, she says she's freaked out, but wanting her to come down to that room makes it seem like that room would be safer for some reason. I totally agree with that. The run implies a sense of urgency. I mean, that to me is really crucial, because if you thought someone was not in the house, this is not what the exchange you would see. This exchange, now again, I agree with whoever it was that said, like, leaving your room, right? Come to my room. I mean, I'm just thinking of all the horror movies, right? Where it's like you're in that, think about it this way, right? Think about all the times where it's like they're having to make that call. If you're in a hiding place, right? It's like, do you stay there, or do you try to get out of there and go somewhere else really quickly when you have a chance? And it's like that split decision, right? Of like, do I stay here or do I risk getting seen? And like, that's what I'm picturing here. And like, come to my room and like, I don't know. You wait for that opportunity where it's like, okay, now I can leave and go somewhere else. I don't know, man. It's wild. I mean, part of this could be concern that he saw that whoever, somebody saw her, right? Which of course everyone wonders, right? Did they see her? And if they saw her, that could explain why they might come back to that room. And maybe that could be why it's safer down there. Also, maybe it's like safer down there because there's two of them together. Or maybe it's because of the phone charge. I don't know. This is all very interesting. So by anyone, do you mean law enforcement? There is definitely, from what it seems like, a lapse in time, right? Like she comes down there. I could see one thing I'll say, like one thing I'll say is this. If this was happening and you think somebody's in the house and they're killing people and you're hiding somewhere, like if you wouldn't know when they've left the house, right? So that would explain not wanting to come out of, once you get into a place that you think is safe, not wanting to leave that place. But what is interesting is like you would call 911, right? You call 911. That's the part that's weird, right? Is like 911 wasn't called until later the next day. And the other thing is like they called their friends over first, right? Or well, I guess we don't know that for sure. Other people showed up, whether they were called there first or whatever, they just showed up because they had plans. Other people got there first. So I don't want to make an assumption that they were called. They got there first. I mean, again, I'm thinking like, I totally would understand not feeling safe enough to come out of the room. However, what I don't understand is why you wouldn't solve that problem by calling law enforcement, right? Because then they can make sure it's safe. You know, like we see it all the time with body cam, right? They have a whole method. They always assume there's more than one person, as we know. They do their whole thing and they go through the whole scene and then they make sure, and then they could tell you it's safe to come out, right? Like that would be the strategy now, you know, as a 20-year-old college student. I don't know. It seems like the obvious thing is call 911 to me. Obviously, the thing is this, obviously BF has a phone and the phone is not dying, right? There's that. So whether or not DM could charge a phone or not, who cares? For the purposes of calling 911, the question I would have for BF is why didn't you fucking call 911? Like what should have happened is this. DM gets down there to BF safely, right? And maybe her phone dies or whatever, but BF has a phone. The phone is on. BF should have then called 911. Now, the only reason I feel confident saying she didn't is because we didn't have anyone showing up until many hours later, right? And again, even when we were going over the 911 call transcript, again, it was possible that there was 911 called prior to that particular phone call, but I don't think, not prior the night before, I wouldn't say, right? Maybe like 20 minutes, but I don't know. That's interesting, Meg. That's really interesting. Meg says she had a stalker who was in her window. Legit, I called my parents. I didn't call 911. I called my parents. That is really interesting. You called your parents. Wow. I would have definitely called 911 first, for sure, without a doubt. I would not call. Yeah. Interesting. Why did you make that choice? Or was it not even a conscious choice? Because like, yeah, I don't know. Interesting. Good question here. ABCs, they say there's fight, flight, freeze. There's also faint. There's 4 Fs. Fight, flight, freeze, and faint. Maybe that means brain freeze. I will say, from when I was in a position where I was constantly exposed to having a lot of PTSD, my autonomic response was freeze. And it meant everything. I'm just speaking for personal. I didn't even think about this until you brought it up, ABC. So I'm just going to speak from my own personal experience. When you're in that state of panic and your body freezes, it's like, for me at least, it was physical and brain as well. It was like literally, because if your brain isn't frozen, your brain might tell you to do something else, right? Like fight or flight. Freeze or faint are the other responses that are different, in the sense that it's not going to stop anything bad from happening. Essentially, it's just like you can't figure it out or something. Like it's like overload, right? So fight or flight would be like taking an active approach to something, right? Where your body has to be able to move. Freezing or fainting is like your brain and your body, I guess, are so overloaded it just broke. The whole thing broke. And that's how I would feel. And in fact, with the PTSD, like I was saying, it would happen to me even when I wasn't in that situation. Like there's times where like I would have a PTSD trigger from those times. And then I would literally end up standing still in the same place and I would lose time for like hours. And I would be like literally frozen and my brain was frozen and my body was frozen. And then I would like come out of it and I'm like, whoa, like what just happened? It was wild. Dylan was calling and texting from 10:30 a.m. onward. And it said, let me go back to does it not have a timestamp on here on the phone call? I'm just looking at that again. Does it not have a timestamp? Hold on. Wait, is that so? Is that so? Because they're just talking about the content of it, right? But I mean, I'm looking through. Oh my gosh. There's the conclusion. This does not have a timestamp on it, guys. I mean, normally I feel like there would be a time like right here, right? And I won't call interview or dispatch. See how there's a dash here? Look. Oh my God, there's no time on it. There's no time on this. There's no time on this. What? You know, in the calls, when we hear them, you hear the call, right? 911, what is your, and it has the 9, right? The voice is like, tells you the time. Oh my God. There's no time. So we don't even know what time this was. Now, and if there was more than one 911 call, then, I mean, you know, I mean, we can kind of guess the time because it looks like the first responder arrives while they're on that call, right? But I don't know that we have it in a document at what time the first responder even got there. Like, I don't think we have that. Do we? I don't know that that's in any of the documents. I don't think it is. It's not in the PCA. Wow. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? So there's no time on this. All right. Well, interesting. Interesting that there's not a time. I mean, if they play the call, we'll hear it though. So, oh, they texted and called friends 30 minutes before the 911 call. Okay. Again, Meg, I mean, I don't know. I would have called 911, but Meg, remember, Meg said here, she called parents first. So, and did you not call 911 at all, Meg? If you're still listening, did you just only call your parents and not 911? I mean, that is, and if you could, and again, if you could answer the question, if you're still listening as to why you made that decision, I mean, that could maybe give us some insight. Because what's weird for one person might not be weird for another person. Like I said, I would have called 911. Meg, who is awesome, right? She's not a crazy head, except for crazy in a good way, like we all are, you know, called her parents. So, and didn't call 911, or maybe at least didn't call them immediately. We're still waiting to hear what she says about that. So, interesting. Okay. So now, okay, so now we're on to the bushy eyebrows, guys. Bushy eyebrow time. All right. So now this is the defense motion in limine regarding the bushy eyebrows, 404B evidence. Oh, wait, did I click on the wrong thing? No, hold on. I clicked on the wrong thing. Sorry, guys. Hold on. Clicked on the wrong thing. Here we go. I was like, wait, what? Okay, here we go. Oops. Okay, there we go. That's the correct one. Interesting. Meg says I was 19 and immature and honestly called my parents because I didn't want to overact. Interesting. Now days later, I called that. Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, that is important context, right? It's entirely possible because these were kids, right? They were, I don't remember how old they are, but somewhere in that vicinity, right? Now we don't know that they didn't call their parents. We don't know that they didn't call their parents, but they're college kids. So their parents could be in other states, right? Or far away. But what I'm saying is it could explain why maybe potentially the first thing they did was call friends over, right? Or something like that, because maybe they didn't want to worry their parents, or maybe their parents are out of state or whatever, not available. Or maybe they did call their parents and their parents are far away and the parents like, call your friends. Or I don't know. We don't know. Okay. So witness identification by bushy eyebrows. Incredible, right? So motion in limine excluding any evidence referencing bushy eyebrows. They don't want her to use the words bushy eyebrows in identifying Mr. Kohberger. The issue of witness identification is a critical one in a trial that is the subject of much litigation. That is because the reliability of witness identification, quote, is the linchpin in determining the admissibility of identification information. Failure to challenge unreliable witness identification can result in finding that the trial counsel's performance was deficient and provide a basis for overturning a conviction. In this case, the description provided by DM is unreliable and should be excluded. That's interesting. The first thing that they're saying is like, hey, state, you don't want this to get, or also Judge Hippler, you don't want this to get overturned, right? On appeal, because this witness is that bad, right? Unreliable. I mean, in that way, like that her performance is not, and so and also saying that the trial counsel's performance was deficient because they didn't challenge it. So you don't want it to get overturned. Although she's never identified Mr. Kohberger, testimony by DM from the witness stand describing bushy eyebrows while Mr. Kohberger sits as the accused at trial will be as damning as her pointing the finger. Yes, like literally we saw that in the Zachary Hughes case, right? From the eyewitness that made me so fucking mad, dude. She literally did that. Even the shaky pointy finger as if you would see it in a meme. I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. When considering whether identification by a witness is reliable, the Idaho Supreme Court has applied the Manson-Biggers balancing test, which looks at 1, the opportunity of the witness to view the criminal at the time of the scene of at the time of the crime. 2, the witness's degree of attention. 3, the accuracy of the witness's prior description of the criminal. 4, the level of certainty demonstrated at the identification. And 5, the length of time between the crime and the identification. For example, that witness again in the Zachary Hughes case wasn't talked to by law enforcement until 2 years later. And it was like right before the trial. Might have been more than 2 years later. And then she's like, he did it. It was him. When the Manson-Biggers, or however you pronounce it, balancing test is applied to the facts of this case, the reliability of the witness identification is non-existent. DM is the only person alive who is known to have seen the intruder. She only saw the intruder briefly. Her recollection or lack thereof is filled with uncertainty, fuzziness, the influence of alcohol, dreaming, and sleepiness. She did not see the intruder well enough to describe him to a composite artist. After she was arrested. If I were DM and I was fuzzy, dreamy, scared, shocked, drunk, whatever, any of it, even just, not to mention if the intruder was wearing a mask and all and whatever. Let me back up. If I felt like for whatever reason I could not confidently identify the person, whether it was because of my own whatever situation I'm in, or because the person was covered up pretty much entirely, I would not feel comfortable making that identification. I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. I would say, nope, But you can imagine how law enforcement would push you into that, can't you? Right? Just saying. So after Mr. Kohberger was arrested, she did not recognize him from photo. Okay, I read that part. Bushy Eyebrows. Interviews on November 13th, 2022. On November 13th, 2022, DM was inside the house when the murders occurred and saw a figure dressed in black, hereafter Intruder, when she peeked out her bedroom door around 4 a.m. Shortly after seeing the Intruder, she went downstairs to BF's room. The two girls fell asleep. Roughly 8 hours later, a 911 call was made from BF's phone at, okay, well, there we go. So 11:56 a.m. Now that's from Nunez's narrative report. Hold on. Well, I'm glad I didn't close out of this. Let me go back to here. Okay. More than one call, guys. Check it out. So that's why I wanted to go back to this, because I noticed this when I was reading this. I was like, oh, that's interesting. This testimony was deemed relevant to the effect it had on dispatcher Calvin and was not cumulative of Officer Nunez's testimony. Now, well, oh, damn, it could be either. So Officer Nunez, no, okay, so no, we still don't know. I'm wondering if, so what I'm wondering is this the same call? Is this the same call that we just read? Because we don't know whose phone was being used. It doesn't say. We just know there was a person. Where was it? A was a woman. Okay. So caller A was a woman. I was just looking back at the key there. So that could have been BF. Could have been BF. So maybe this is the same. The one. Maybe these calls are one and the same. It was BF making the call from her phone. So could be. Okay. So I just want to double check that because of the Nunez part. I thought maybe Nunez was a different dispatcher, but no, Nunez was the first responding officer. So okay. Okay. So shortly after seeing the Intruder, she went downstairs to BF's room. Okay. The two girls fell asleep. They fell asleep, it says. Maybe they were really drunk. I don't know. I'm just shocking that they just fell asleep. Well, they testify to something else at trial too, right? Like, again, I'm just picturing if you're a young, drunk college kid, right? And you've got law enforcement that really are relying on you to give them probable cause because they don't have anything. Think about the pressure that would be put on them. I'm just saying, think about the pressure that would be put on them when, you know, they don't have much else to go off of, right? And think about the desperation that we all are very well aware of, the desperation in this case on law enforcement to find somebody quickly, right? The entire thing was desperation. And so think about the pressure that would have been put on them to help or explain things. And like one of the problems law enforcement would have is they would look at this timeline and they would right away realize, wait, we have to try to figure out a way to explain the gap in time, whether it be frozen shock phase or they were asleep. Now remember, like I was saying, just like the thing with the door, right? They really wanted to characterize the person going towards the door as like, this is the person leaving, and that way we can match it up with the Elantra, right? But DM, to our knowledge, never actually said she saw him leaving. If she had said that, that would have been even better, and they could have put that in the PCA, right? That would have been even more confirmatory. So you have to keep that in mind, that whatever it is that BF and DM maybe potentially experienced, and maybe even what they told law enforcement, could morph over time by law enforcement, right? Due to the way that they couch it with the narrative, or even from pressure from them. We know, we see this happen time and time again. When you watch, those of you guys who watch confessions and stuff where somebody's confession changes, right? Especially if it's like a forced confession, just as an example, the pressure from law enforcement to get the answers they want that they can use is really important to keep in mind. And especially if you're a drunk young college kid, you're like, I don't know why I did this thing, or I don't know what I saw. It was, you can imagine, but when they're relying on it, you can just see how this could be. So my point being, it's entirely possible that these two kids don't want to testify. I'm sure they don't want to testify. And like I said, if I were DM, I would not feel comfortable making any type of identification, right? And we've seen this in other trials where there's certain witnesses called by the state that are way more friendly to the defense because they hate the state. They hate the law enforcement officers. They didn't really agree to do this thing, or they feel like they're being mischaracterized. And sometimes they're more friendly to the defense because the defense is like, but that's not really what you said, right? Or that's, you know what I mean? Or that's not really what you meant. Or they're like, great example. Like there's so many examples, right? We see it all the time in cases. So anyway, my point being, it'll be interesting to see what happens at trial, because they could testify and explain some of this, but the state might just not want this to come out yet, right? Like the state's going to have their own reasons for potentially wanting things to be different than they were, potentially in reality. And when you've got these two kids, especially if they're shit-faced and they're scared, whatever, you could see how some of that could come out more on cross from the defense than it would on the state, because the state's going to want to make them seem like they're really fucking solid witnesses, right? So. Okay, so 8 hours later, 911 call was made. Okay, at 11:56 a.m. More than 8 hours after seeing the intruder, DM was interviewed by law enforcement at the scene and at the police department. It was confusing to DM that the intruder looked at her but did not come towards her or say anything. I understand that would be confusing. When describing the intruder to Officer Nunez at the scene, she described the height, build, and clothing of the intruder. Her description did not mention eyebrows. When she called BF before going downstairs, she said she was kind of out of it, really tired. Well, the other thing is this. We just looked at that snippet of text messages. It says nothing about eyebrows there either, right? Later, when she was interviewed at the police department, so again, the bushy eyebrows could be another example of the test of the story morphing over time because the detectives or law enforcement need something, right? And another example, the sliding glass door, the bushy eyebrows, who knows what else, right? But if you're one of these witnesses, you would not like this. You would not want them putting words in your mouth. You would not want them to represent that you were more sure than you were, right? But you can see how that could potentially make somebody like that more friendly to the defense. Later, when she was interviewed at the police department, Detective Mowry inquired about facial features and asked DM if she knew what color the intruder's eyebrows were. She did not know the color of the intruder's eyes or eyebrows. Quote, everything was kind of blurry, like I just don't fully remember it. During the Mowry interview, DM again mentioned that she was in and out of it because she was so tired. It sounds like she really does not want them to, she does not want, like I said, she does not feel comfortable saying, I can identify this person, right? Like, don't rely on me. I can't fucking tell you anything, you know? Pictures on November 13th. Law enforcement took pictures of DM's room on November 13th and November 19th. On the walls in her room were many pictures of eyes. Oh, here's some footnotes here. The full transcript of the interview. Okay, they're attached. Right. Well, we don't get to see this. There are many pictures of eyes with prominent eyebrows, many of which she had drawn. Interesting. Some of the eyebrows are heavy, voluminous, puffy, or perhaps subjectively bushy. According to Detective Lake, he found, quote, artwork of human figures with an emphasis upon the eyes and eyebrows were pinned to corkboards, end quote. I wonder if she was a graphic designer or like an arts major or something. Interview on November 17th. So on November 17th, 4 days later, DM was interviewed by Detective Gooch, indicating she was really asleep and probably very drunk when she woke up around 4 a.m. That could also explain all the typos in the text messages, right? Throughout the interview, DM expressed uncertainty. This is legit what I'm saying. Uncertainty about what she heard and saw, did not know if it was real or if it was a dream, and if it was and honestly, at this juncture, I would say this. I would say don't blame DM, blame law enforcement, right? It is better to have a witness who is not so quick to just say, yeah, I saw it. Like, again, the example in the Zachary Hughes trial. That witness, that old lady who lived across the street, was so quick to just be like, yep, it was that person, only because it was the person who was arrested, when it was clear she actually didn't see anything. That was very clear. I tore that shit apart. It was so frustrating. It's much better to have a witness who's like, I don't know. Like, I appreciate that she's willing to say she was drunk. Doesn't know if it was a dream or if it was real. This is her trying to get out of having to try to force her to identify somebody. It is to me much more commendable than somebody who's like just quick to point to somebody and be like, they did it, right? She does not want them to put that pressure on her, and she does not want to make a wrong identification, is what this sounds like. And so she's telling them over and over again, I can't identify this person. Like, that's what this sounds like to me. And they're like, why not? It's like, well, she's giving them so many reasons, right? And it's law enforcement's fault, not her fault, if they still want to rely upon her to ID somebody when she's clearly not comfortable with it. Throughout the interview, okay, I already read that part. It just doesn't make sense. DM described the intruder and told Detective Gooch that she recalls seeing his eyebrows, his bushy eyebrows, but she did not recall the color of the eyebrows. She does not remember the eyes or the mouth, just the eyebrows. Again, you have to keep in mind, at this point, she's been interviewed several times. See what I mean? This is the pressure from law enforcement, just like we see with false confessions, right? Where they're like not letting her, they're not taking no for an answer. That's what it is. They're not taking no for an answer when they should. This makes me sick that when you've got someone who's called an eyewitness, but really not really an eyewitness, right? Like, and they don't feel comfortable and you're not going to take no for an answer. This is how you end up with all kinds of problems, right? Like we're seeing where it's like they and the eyebrows over time, after all this pressure, right? Just saying. When she saw the intruder, she thought that the intruder was about 3 feet away from her, but that could be off since she was still a little bit drunk. She's still reluctant or reticent to try to give them something affirmative. Don't blame her. Better that than to say something incorrect, right? She did not think that she could remember enough to give composite for composite artists. Good. I'm glad she's not going to do. Remember, like with Alex Murdaugh in The Side of the Road, and how he just made somebody up to create that whole thing, and for a composite artist. Glad she didn't do that. People that are really quick to try to get somebody fucking arrested can do that, right? We've seen it. She doesn't want to do that. She could just recall the bushy eyebrows, but not the shape or color of them. In this interview, Detective Gooch asked if DM had anxiety, which led to DM stating that she had a lot of lucid dreams about being kidnapped or chased. She indicated that she watched Criminal Minds and fell asleep to crime podcasts. Oh boy. The lucid dreams began in high school. Wow. Interview on December 1st. So about a half a month later, DM was again interviewed and described the intruder. She did not see his eyes, but saw, quote, one eyebrow or two. Oh, so this is the unibrow. But it was just like this bushy eyebrow. I could just see like an eyebrow, this bushy eyebrow. Well, that is if I were the defense, I would not want to keep this out, because you know what? If anything, that's like, hey, guess what? This is a different person, wrong suspect, right? This is like exculpatory. I would say I would not want to keep this out. A unibrow? Come on. Hi, Jeff H. Welcome back. Yeah, I don't know. I would say let this in, right? About the eyebrow, because the one eyebrow, that's like good stuff for the defense, I feel like, right? I mean, this is like, go back and look for somebody with a unibrow, because there can't be that many, right? She did not remember the color or the shape of the eyebrow. She just remembered it being bushy. She did not remember she saw one eyebrow or two. Throughout the interview, DM indicated that she had always had really bad dreams, lucid dreams, and scary dreams. She did not know what parts of her recollections were dreams and what parts were real. When she woke up that morning, she did not fully understand what was a dream and what was not. In this interview, she indicated that she thought that the person she saw was a fireman. Wow. Yeah. Again, a lot of this, I think, can be attributed to the pressure from law enforcement, right? And it makes me sick. You know, statement affidavit to support arrest warrant. On December 29, 2022, a statement submitted by law enforcement in support of the arrest used descriptive information from DM's interviews. DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. Yeah, I should say eyebrow, singular, right? Interview on December 30th, 2022. After the arrest of Mr. Kohberger, she was interviewed by Detective Lake and Detective Tolson. When she learned that an arrest had been made, she found a mugshot of Mr. Kohberger online. When asked if Mr. Kohberger was the person she saw in the house, she did not know if Mr. Kohberger was the intruder. She knew that the intruder had looked at her because of the bushy eyebrow, in quotes there, with singular. All that she remembered is some bushy eyebrow and all black, some sort of mask. Subsequently, DM provided grand jury testimony and was questioned about what the intruder was wearing. She was again uncertain, and that testimony is attached but not quoted verbatim here. Liability of witness identification. Opportunity to view. Okay, so DM peeked out of her bedroom door 3 times after 4 a.m. on November 13th. Third time she saw a figure dressed in black. At the scene, she described the intruder as, quote, he was a little bit taller than me. I couldn't really see much of him, but I'm almost positive he was wearing a full black outfit, and he had this mask thing just over his forehead and over his mouth. He didn't say anything to me, like, at all. At the police department, her description of the intruder was similar. I opened the door again, and this guy is right there. He's maybe my height, a few inches taller, not like skinny, athletic build. He has all black. He's wearing this mask that covers just his forehead, and here it goes like around, and he was white. So she's clearly gesturing there to the mask. There were no lights on the stairs. DM was uncertain whether the kitchen light or the bathroom light was on. The kitchen light might have been on, but the twinkle lights in the living room might have been on. Degree of attention. DM acknowledged that her brain might have been fuzzy due to alcohol and sleepiness when she saw the intruder. She stated that she had been drinking alcohol just prior to peeking out of her bedroom door, around 4 a.m. and seeing an intruder. She was intoxicated when she arrived home around 1:15 to 1:30-ish. She was probably very drunk when she saw the intruder at 4 a.m. Accuracy of description. When asked if she could identify the intruder's face, she testified that, quote, I wouldn't say I fully remember their face, but I remember seeing his eyebrows. So at some point I probably did see his face and don't remember it. Again, the morphing over time, like I said, the morphing over time, right? Due to the pressure. During other interviews, she said he was wearing a mask. Right. It's funny. This is so similar to what happened in the Zachary Hughes trial, where literally in the video that there is of the suspect, although he's now been convicted, he wearing a mask and a hat, like completely covered up, can't see his face. So that's why it was especially funny. Funny is not the right word. Horrifying when the eyewitness was like, I recognize his face. I saw his face. So it's like he was wearing a mask. Like it's not even about a memory thing there because it's on camera wearing a mask. So my point being that this is a whole thing that they'll put this pressure on eyewitnesses, right? Where even if they are wearing a mask, they still want to pressure them to be able to identify their face, which makes literally no sense, right? Law enforcement, can we not do that? Can we do better, please? I'm just saying pressure her into remembering more details, right? Like, because the bushy eyebrow thing, it's like essentially in the first couple interviews, there's no mention of the bushy eyebrow, and there's no mention of it at the time when she's texting BF. And so what the pressure would be, come on, surely you can remember something. Okay, what did you see, right? And then here, notably the thing about the eyebrows in the room, right? You can see how if somebody's scared and they're under pressure, but they don't want to give something that they think could actually identify somebody, to be like, oh, there was bushy eyebrows, because it's so stupid, right? Like that's so subjective and so stupid that I could see that could be something where it's like, because of they're just like, they're relentless, right? But that's not really, typically that would never be like an affirmative ID of somebody. It shouldn't be, right? Like that's a really dumb thing. A unibrow is far more distinctive. Like you could probably use that as like, okay, how many people really have unibrows, right? In a small town. But bushy eyebrows is, yeah. And then you have the eyebrows in the room. So you could see how it's like maybe a detail from in her room because of the pressure morphed into, and the thing is this, right? It's totally subjective as to whether Bryan Kohberger has bushy eyebrows. I would not call them bushy eyebrows, but it's totally subjective. So in other words, I wouldn't even say that it was an accurate ID at all. Again, it's just something that she said, probably because of the pressure, and only after, the key part, only after already being interviewed a couple times. It wasn't said the first interview, and it was not said when she was texting. Oh, Jeff from the Adelson trial. Jeff Lacoste. That's funny. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what wasn't down there. Now, ostensibly, where it ends is where it ends because it looks like her phone's about to die, right? She says my phone is dying, and then she goes downstairs. But texting before that, like we already talked about that. Like there could have been texts, there could have been phone calls. We just don't know. Again, the key thing here is like, and my point being that they would be pressuring her to remember something, not because they have a suspect in mind at that point in time, right? But because that's what they do. If you've got, like, if you have nothing to go on, right? It's days after the homicides and you've got a quote unquote eyewitness, and that's who they're relying. That's like literally what they're relying on. It'd be before they have the Elantra videos and whatnot, right? Although y'all know how helpful that is. So my point being that they would be relying on her to give them something that then they could then use as a lead, right? And my point being that it's really up to people. It's completely subjective as to whether or not that lead panned out to be Bryan Kohberger or not because of the bushy eyebrows, right? I mean, again, I wouldn't say they're bushy, but then you also have the unibrow issue. Eyebrow witnesses are not eyewitnesses. Yeah. So here, the good vibes light from, we just read this part, but like she literally says she doesn't remember what lights were on and goes through the different lights. There were no lights on in the stairs. DM was uncertain whether either the kitchen light or the bathroom light was on. The kitchen light might have been on, but the twinkle lights in the living room might have been on. I mean, I don't know if, they don't say good vibes light, but this is taken from the way it was described from a different Motion in Limine. But again, the eyebrows were not mentioned immediately. I think that's the crucial thing. They were not mentioned until November 17th, 4 days later. And prior to that, she was interviewed November 13th, multiple interviews. It says interviews plural on November 13th. So in those interviews and in her text messages, right now, we don't have all the text, but in these interviews, Mallory inquired about facial features and asked if she knew what color the eyebrows were. She did not know the color of the eyes or eyebrows. She's not saying she even saw them, okay, in the November 13th interviews. And then they saw the pictures on November 13th. It's not until November 17th that she says she recalls seeing bushy eyebrows. And then later on, it's one eyebrow, one bushy eyebrow. Okay, so we read this. Read that one. Okay, we were here on level of certainty. And that's another point, right? Yeah, their voice, their gait, any facial markings, it's always going to be information, right? And what's interesting is like the only information apparently that they got from DM that could be anything about the actual person is the eyebrows. There was nothing. We didn't have any. There was nothing about the gait, nothing about the voice, and except for there's that one thing about the voice she didn't recognize. But yeah, anyway, like in terms of details, right? It's just this is the eyebrows. No, there's nothing about an accent. Right, I'm here to help. Right, there's nothing about an accent. It's just an unfamiliar voice. Hi, Victorine, welcome. Level of certainty. During each interview, DM was uncertain. On December 30th, after the arrest of Mr. Kohberger, DM was interviewed by Detective Lake and Detective Tolson. When she learned that an arrest had been made, oh wait, I already read this part too. And again, she says bushy eyebrow, singular. Okay, time. This is where we were. Time between event and identification. At approximately 4 a.m. on November 13th, DM saw the intruder. Roughly 8 hours later, the 911 call was made. More than 8 hours after seeing the intruder, DM provided a very limited and uncertain description of the intruder to two different officers. On November 17th, 4 days later, DM did not think that she could sufficiently describe the intruder for a composite artist. On December 30th, 2022, after Mr. Kohberger's arrest, DM could not recognize Mr. Kohberger from a photo. Further, by the time that DM testifies at the trial later this year, more than 3.5 years will have passed since the murders occurred on November 13th. And an argument. That's funny. Case law in Idaho Criminal Rules 601 and 602 excludes evidence of, quote, bushy eyebrows. With certain exceptions, every person is competent to be a witness, and that's from Idaho Rules of Evidence 601. Incompetency deemed by the court occurs when, quote, persons from the court whom the court finds are incapable of receiving just impressions of the facts about which they, and just as in like fair, right? Impressions of the facts about which they are examined or of relating them accurately. Idaho law tends to favor the finding of competency. Under Idaho Rules of Evidence 602, a witness must have sufficient personal knowledge of the matter to which she's testifying. Testimony satisfies Idaho Rules of Evidence 602 if the jury or other trier of fact could reasonably find that the witness perceived the event. Evidence to prove personal knowledge may consist of the witness's own testimony. When considering whether identification by a witness is reliable, the Idaho Supreme Court has applied there it is again, the Manson-Biggers balancing test, which look at the opportunity of the witness to view the criminal at the time of the crime, the witness's degree of attention, the accuracy of the witness prior description of the criminal, the level of certainty demonstrated at the identification. Yeah, the certainty is not there at all. I mean, all of it's a mess, but yeah. At no time did she ever say she was certain of anything. That's really clear. And the length of time between the crime and the identification. When the balancing test is applied to the facts of this case, there's no reliable witness identification. As explained in detail above, DM's opportunity to view was seconds at most. Her attention was influenced by alcohol and sleepiness, and the only identifying attributes are height in relation to her own, a skinny athletic build, and a bushy eyebrow. He was wearing a mask. She has repeatedly each time interviewed expressed uncertainty about what she saw. These general descriptors could fit millions of individuals. Her uncertainty is repeated in each interview, and at least 8 hours passed before she was interviewed the first time. And so here they're saying Mr. Kohberger does not have bushy eyebrows, but the artwork on DM's wall, which should draws eyes, I guess showed, I don't know. There's a typo here. With eyebrows could be described as bushy, full, or prominent. There's a great risk that at trial in front of a jury, her testimony will be viewed as clear identification of Mr. Kohberger. This would be a false identification and would prejudice the proceedings in a way that must be avoided. And then here they're saying 403 because it's unfairly prejudicial. To be admissible, I say this all the time, you guys have heard. To be admissible, evidence must first be relevant. Evidence is relevant if it has any tendency to make the fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence, and the fact is of consequence in determining the action. Whether a fact is of consequence or material is determined by its relationship to the legal theories presented by the parties. In this case, the evidence of bushy eyebrows is not relevant to the crime's charge. It would not tend to make any material or disputed fact of the crime's charge in this case more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. The purpose of admitting such testimony is for identification purposes. Given the argument above, such testimony is inadmissible. There's no other relevant reason to allow this testimony. So what they're saying is the relevancy here would be for identification purposes. But they've already laid out the law first that here's the standard that you have to meet in the balancing test for identification purposes. And they laid out why they think it does not meet that standard. And because it does not meet the standard that it needs to meet in the balancing test for identification purposes, then it's not relevant. Under 403, the court may exclude evidence related to bushy eyebrows if its probative value is substantially outweighed by danger of one or more of the following: unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, wasting time, or needlessly presenting. I don't know if that really applies here, to be honest. I think the balancing test is enough for me, but I don't know that Judge Hitler will see it that way. But again, if I'm the defense, I kind of want that testimony in. Like the bushy eyebrow, the unibrow is you know, even assuming the court concludes that the descriptive words bushy eyebrows are somehow relevant, whatever minimal probative value they may have is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice and confusion of the issues. Unfair prejudice is prejudice that tends to suggest a decision on an improper basis. DM could not recall enough details about the intruder to provide a description to a composite artist. Allowing her to use the descriptive words bushy eyebrows confuses the issues. If evidence of bushy eyebrows is presented to the jury might well believe that Mr. Kohberger is guilty simply because of bushy eyebrows. right? And I guess that's enough of a reason to want to keep it out, right? Again, even though I feel like she could be actually a friendly witness to the defense. As a consequence, there's a danger that the jury would reach a decision on an improper basis due to evidence that is unfairly prejudicial. And then the conclusion, you should grant this motion to eliminate, obviously, is what they're saying. Meg, did you ever answer my question? No, you did answer my question about, yeah, never mind, about the calling of the, yeah, I'm remembering now. I totally agree. She should have had representation. Totally agree. Yep. Totally agree with that. Yeah. Because when law enforcement is being unfair, you know, like unfair is not even the right word, but like they would stop that shit, right? Because they wouldn't want her to be on the hook for saying something that was said that was inaccurate, right? Due to the pressure, right? Also, they would make sure that law enforcement wasn't like feeding her information, because that happens too. So yeah, she totally should have had representation. So that's it for this one. We are going to be back for more tonight. And tonight, I think the plan is we're going to do the motion to strike the death penalty with the autism spectrum disorder. We're going to do the touch DNA, and we're going to do the Amazon click activity. We might be able to fit another one in. We'll just kind of see. But we're going to do at least those three. So the touch DNA, the Amazon click activity, and the autism spectrum disorder. I do have, as I've mentioned earlier, like I do have all the latest documents for Karen Reed and a million other cases, Adelson's, Shanna Gardner. But I don't think we'll be getting to any of that until probably tomorrow. But I don't want to get too behind because there's so many more documents for BK, as you all know, that's why we're going to do another BK stream tonight. And then we'll probably be doing some of those other cases, you know, over the weekend and stuff. So yeah. Again, shout out to all the members and to everybody in the Squirrel Crew, right? But I just wanted to thank all the members and thank everyone who's gifted memberships as well. There was already, for anyone who is interested in orchids, we already had a new members only video post just a few hours ago for the members. Again, welcoming ideas for members only live streams as well. You're very welcome. So yeah, but love you guys, and we will be back later for more BK coverage. So I will see you guys then. But for now, squirrel out, and I will see you guys soon.